Welcome to Wife Cheating Story. I hope you have an enjoyable and relaxing time listening. Let's get started.
My name is Callum Reyes, and I still remember the day Myra's smile didn't quite match her eyes. We'd been married less than a year, fresh off 3 years of dating that felt like a whirlwind of ambition and shared dreams. We met at a business conference, both of us in finance, both of us hungry to make something of ourselves. She had this spark, this drive, and I thought we were building something unbreakable. I loved her, still do, in a way, and I thought that love could carry us through anything. But then, just a few months into our marriage, she sat me down at our little kitchen table, her hands folded tight, and said the words that flipped everything upside down: "Let's move in with my mom." I didn't fight it at first. Her mom, Dolores, had lost her husband a few months back, and Mira didn't want her rattling around in that big house all alone. I got it. I even admired Mira for it. Her heart was in the right place, and I wanted to support her. So, I said yes, packed up our stuff, and we moved into Dolores's place. It's a nice house, 2 stories with a wide porch and a backyard that stretches out toward a row of trees. I figured it'd be temporary, a way to help out until Dolores got back on her feet. But the moment I walked through that front door, lugging a suitcase in each hand, I felt it. Dolores was waiting in the living room, arms crossed, her lips curved into a smile that didn't touch her eyes. She didn't say much at first, just a quick welcome and a nod, but I could feel her sizing me up. Her gaze lingered on me, sharp and cold, like she was peeling me apart layer by layer and didn't like what she found. I brushed it off, told myself I was imagining things. Mira hugged her mom, chattering about how nice it'd be to all be together, and I smiled along, trying to fit into this new setup. But as the days turned into weeks, that smile of Dolores's kept showing up, fake as a $3 bill. She'd watch me over her coffee mug in the morning or glance my way while she watered her plants, and every time, it was the same, a tight little smirk that said, "Clear as day, you're not good enough for my daughter." I didn't know what I'd done to earn that look. I wasn't loud or rude. I didn't leave messes or slack off. Hell, I was pulling in good money, $55,000 a month from my investment firm, but I didn't flaunt it, and I worked from home, so maybe she didn't notice. Mira was out a lot, either at her office or running around with Dolores, so it was just me and her mom most days. I'd set up my laptop in the spare room, trading stocks and managing portfolios, while Dolores moved around the house like she owned every inch of it, which, to be fair, she did, at least in her mind. I kept my head down, stayed polite, said good morning and how's your day, even when she barely grunted back. I figured she'd warm up eventually. Maybe she was just grieving, still raw from losing her husband, and I was the stranger in her space. I could handle that. I dealt with tough clients before, people who didn't trust me until I proved my worth. So I told myself to be patient, to give her time. Mira was happy we were helping her mom, and that was enough for me. But deep down, I couldn't shake it, that smile, that look. It wasn't just suspicion or grief. It was judgment, pure and simple. She didn't think I belonged there, didn't think I deserved Mira. And the worst part? She didn't even know me. Not really. She hadn't asked about my work, my life, or what I brought to the table. She just saw a guy who didn't punch a clock at some downtown office and decided that was all she needed to know. I kept quiet about it, didn't tell Mira what I felt. I didn't want to stir up trouble between them. But every time Dolores flashed that fake smile, it chipped away at me a little more, like water wearing down a stone. I started wondering how long I could take it, how long I could live under that roof with her watching me, waiting for me to prove her right. I didn't know it then, but that smile was just the beginning. It was the first crack in a wall that was about to come crashing down, and I was standing right in the middle of it, trying to hold everything together for the woman I loved. But love's a funny thing. It can blind you, keep you hanging on even when the signs are screaming at you to run. And those signs? They were about to get a whole lot louder. I don't know when I started measuring my days by silence, but that's how it went after we moved into Dolores's house. My name's Callum Reyes, and I'm not the type to make waves, not in my marriage, not in my work, not even when someone's got it out for me. Mira was my anchor, the one I built my life around, and I'd have done just about anything to keep her happy. So when she asked me to move in with her mom, I said yes, even though every instinct I had told me it was a bad idea. I figured I could handle a little tension, a few awkward months, until Dolores got used to me. I was wrong. From the start, it was like living with a shadow that didn't want me there. Dolores didn't yell at first, she didn't have to. She had this way of saying nothing that said everything. I'd be sitting at my laptop in the spare room, running my private investment firm, and she'd walk by, her footsteps slow and deliberate, like she was checking if I was actually doing anything. I made $55,000 a month, steady, quiet money from trades and portfolios I'd built over years, but I didn't talk about it. I didn't need to. Mira knew, and that was enough for me. But Dolores? She didn't ask, didn't care. To her, I was just some guy who didn't leave the house at 8 a.m. with a tie on, so I must have been nothing. I kept my head down, stayed out of her way. I'd work all day, managing client accounts, watching the market, while Mira was off at her office downtown or out with her mom, picking up groceries or whatever else Dolores needed. The house was big enough that I could have avoided her most of the time, but she made sure I didn't. It started small, little digs she'd toss out like they were nothing. I'd be pouring cereal in the kitchen, and she'd mutter, "Must be nice to sit around all day," before brushing past me to the sink. I'd nod, force a smile, and let it slide. What was I supposed to do? Tell her I was pulling in more in a month than her late husband probably made in a year? That didn't feel right. I wasn't there to prove anything to her. I was there for Mira. But those comments kept coming, sharper each time. One morning, I was on a call with a client, pacing the living room, when she walked in and turned the vacuum on full blast, glaring at me like I was trespassing. I hung up quick, apologized, and moved back to my room. She didn't say a word, just kept vacuuming, her lips pressed tight. I could feel the heat rising in my chest, but I swallowed it down. For Mira. For peace. Thing is, Mira didn't see any of it. She'd come home tired from work, and Dolores would flip a switch. Suddenly she was all warm smiles, and, "How was your day, honey?" I'd sit there at dinner, picking at my food, while they talked about old memories or some errand they'd run together. If I tried to join in, Dolores would give me that look again, the one that didn't reach her eyes, and change the subject. I started wondering if I was invisible to her, or worse, if she wanted me to feel that way. I told myself it didn't matter. I had my work, my routine. I'd wake up early, make coffee, and get to my desk before the market opened. I liked the quiet of those mornings, before Dolores was up, before the air got thick with her judgment. But even that didn't last. She started waking up earlier too, like she couldn't stand me having a moment to myself. One day, I was frying an egg when she came stomping in, her bathrobe tied tight, and said, "You're a grown man, loafing around in my house like a stray." Her voice was loud, sharp, like she'd been holding it in for weeks. I turned off the stove, looked at her, and said, "I'm just making breakfast, Dolores." She huffed, waved her hand like I was a fly she could swat away, and stormed out. I stood there, the egg sizzling in the pan, my hands gripping the counter. I wanted to yell back, to tell her she didn't know a damn thing about me, but I didn't. I couldn't. Mira would have been crushed if I'd fought with her mom, and I wasn't about to put her in the middle. So I took it. Day after day, I took it. The cold glances, the muttered insults, the way she'd sigh every time I walked into a room. I kept quiet, kept working, kept telling myself it'd get better. But it didn't. It built up, slow and steady, like a storm you don't see coming until the sky's already black. I'd lie awake at night, Mira breathing soft beside me, and wonder how long I could keep this up. I wasn't flashy, I didn't drive a fancy car or wear suits that screamed money, but I was good at what I did. I built something solid, something I was proud of, and Dolores didn't see any of it. She saw a man who didn't fit her picture of success, and that was enough for her to write me off. I started dreading the mornings, the sound of her slippers on the hardwood, the way she'd hover just close enough to let me know I wasn't welcome. I'd catch myself clenching my jaw, my fingers tapping too hard on my keyboard, and I'd have to stop, take a breath, remind myself why I was there. It was for Mira. Always for Mira. But there's only so much a man can take before the silence stops being a shield and starts feeling like a cage. And I was getting close, real close, to finding out where that line was. I'll never forget the morning it all boiled over, literally and figuratively. My name's Callum Reyes, and up until that day, I'd managed to keep my cool in Dolores's house, no matter how much she pushed me. I'd been living there for months, taking her jabs, her glares, her little comments about me being a freeloader, all while I quietly ran my investment firm from the spare room. I was pulling in $55,000 a month, more than enough to keep me and Mira comfortable, but I didn't advertise it. I didn't need to. I figured my work spoke for itself, even if Dolores couldn't hear it. That morning, though, something snapped, and it wasn't just me. I'd woken up early, like always, trying to get a head start before the house stirred. Mira was already gone. She had an early meeting at her office, and I was alone in the kitchen, making coffee. The sun was just creeping up, spilling light across the counter, and for a minute, it felt peaceful. I had the kettle on, the coffee grounds ready, and I was thinking about the trades I needed to check that day. It was a routine I liked, a small piece of normal in a house that didn't feel like mine. Then I heard her, Dolores's slippers slapping against the hardwood, quick and angry, like she'd been waiting for me to step out of line. She stormed into the kitchen, her face twisted up like she'd just bitten into something sour. I turned to say good morning, but she didn't give me the chance. "Get out of my house, you unemployed leech," she shouted, her voice bouncing off the cabinets. "This is no place for beggars who can't work." I froze, the kettle whistling behind me, steam curling up into the air. I'd heard her digs before, but this was different, louder, meaner, like she'd been saving it up. I took a breath, turned off the burner, and faced her. "Dolores," I said, keeping my voice steady, "I'm not unemployed. I work from home. I've told you that." She laughed, a sharp, ugly sound, and stepped closer, her eyes narrowed. "Work? Sitting on your ass all day isn't work. You're living off my daughter, and I'm sick of it." I opened my mouth to explain, again, that I ran a business, that I paid my way and then some, but she wasn't listening. She never listened. Before I could get another word out, she grabbed the kettle off the stove. I didn't see it coming, not really. I thought she was just gesturing, maybe trying to make a point. But then she swung her arm, and a wave of hot water hit me, splashing across my shoulder and down my back. It wasn't boiling, thank God. The kettle had been off for a minute, but it was hot enough to sting, sharp and sudden, like a slap I couldn't dodge. I stumbled back, my shirt soaking through, the heat biting into my skin. "What the hell?" I yelled, more shocked than angry, my hands shaking as I gripped the counter. Dolores didn't flinch. She stood there, kettle still in her hand, her chest heaving like she'd just won something. "You deserve it," she spat. "That'll teach you to live off my daughter." I couldn't believe it. My shoulder throbbed, my shirt clung to me, and all I could do was stare at her, this woman who'd just attacked me in her own kitchen. That's when Mira ran in, her purse still slung over her shoulder. She must have forgotten something and come back. "Mom, what's going on?" she cried, her eyes darting between us. Dolores waved her off like it was nothing. "He's fine," she said, setting the kettle down with a clang. "He needed a wake-up call." Mira rushed over to me, her hands hovering like she didn't know where to touch. "Callum, are you okay? What happened?" I looked at her, then at Dolores, and something clicked. All those months of swallowing her crap, keeping quiet for Myra's sake, it wasn't working. It wasn't peace, it was just me letting her walk all over me. "Your mom threw hot water on me," I said, my voice flat. "She thinks I'm a bum." Myra's face crumpled, and she turned to Dolores. "Mom, why would you do that?" Dolores crossed her arms, unapologetic. "He's got no business here, Mira. You deserve better than some lazy nobody." I wanted to laugh. Lazy nobody? I could have told her right then that I was the one keeping her precious house afloat, that my money paid the bills she never even thought about. But I didn't. My hands were still trembling, not from the burn, but from the realization sinking in. Dolores didn't just dislike me. She hated me. She wanted me gone, out of her house, out of her daughter's life. And she'd crossed a line to make it happen. Mira was still talking, her voice high and frantic, trying to calm things down. "Mom, this is crazy. Callum's my husband. You can't just..." But I cut her off, gentle but firm. "Mira, stop." She looked at me, confused, and I shook my head. "I'm not doing this anymore." I peeled off my wet shirt, the skin underneath red but not blistered, and tossed it on the counter. Dolores smirked, like she'd won, and that's when I knew. I was done. I didn't say another word, just walked upstairs, grabbed a dry shirt, and started thinking. I wasn't going to scream or fight or give her the satisfaction of seeing me lose it, but I wasn't staying either. She wanted me out? Fine. I'd go. But I wasn't leaving empty-handed, not after everything I'd put into that house, that life. As I stood there, the sting fading into a dull ache, I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't just anger, it was clarity. Dolores thought she'd scalded me into submission, but all she'd done was wake me up. She'd regret this, not because I'd make her, but because she didn't know who she was messing with. I'd kept quiet too long, and that was on me. But now I was ready to move. And when I did, she'd feel it, quietly, surely, and without a single shout. I didn't say much after the kettle incident, not because I didn't have words, but because I didn't need them yet. My name's Callum Reyes. and I've always been the kind of guy who thinks before he acts. Dolores had crossed a line, throwing that hot water on me, and part of me wanted to tear into her right there in the kitchen, let her know exactly what I thought of her. But I didn't. I've learned over the years that silence can hit harder than shouting, and I wasn't about to give her the fight she was itching for. So I walked away. My shoulders still stung, the skin red and tender under my fresh shirt, but it wasn't the pain that drove me. It was the look on her face, that smug little twist of her lips, like she'd finally put me in my place. She thought she'd won. She had no idea what was coming. I went upstairs, Mira trailing behind me, her voice shaky as she tried to make sense of it all. "Callum, please," she said. Standing in the doorway of the spare room, I'd turned into my office. "Don't do this. We can figure it out. Mom didn't mean it. She's just upset." I kept moving, folding a shirt, grabbing my laptop, stuffing it all into a small duffel bag. I loved Mira, still do, even now, but I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. "Mira," I said, my voice low and steady, "you know where I am when you're ready to see the truth." She blinked at me, her eyes wet and confused, but I didn't stop to explain. She'd have to work it out herself, because I was done carrying this alone. I zipped up the bag, threw on my coat, and headed downstairs. Dolores was in the living room, sitting in her armchair like it was a throne, her arms crossed, and that same smirk plastered on her face. She didn't say a word as I passed, just watched me with those cold, triumphant eyes. I didn't give her the satisfaction of a glance. I walked out the front door, the cool afternoon air hitting my face, and felt something shift. Not relief, not yet, but a kind of freedom Hannah's gotcha moment that made me pause. I drove downtown, the city blurring past my windshield as I headed for a hotel I'd stayed at once for a conference. It wasn't fancy, just a quiet place with clean sheets and a bar downstairs, good enough for now. I checked in, dropped my bag in the room, and headed to the lobby with my laptop. The bartender slid me a whiskey, neat, and I sat there, sipping slow, letting the burn settle me. My mind wasn't on Dolores or Mira, not yet. It was on the numbers. I logged into my trading dashboard, the screen lighting up with charts and figures, the steady pulse of my work. This was my world, the one Dolores never bothered to see. I'd built it from nothing, years of late nights and calculated risks, and it paid off $55,000 a month, consistent, quiet money. I didn't flash it around, didn't need to. But that house? The one Dolores thought was hers? That was mine too, in a way she didn't know. When her husband died, the place was drowning in debt, months from foreclosure. I'd stepped in, bought it outright, put it in my name to keep it safe for Mira and her mom. I never told them, didn't see the point. I paid the mortgage, the utilities, every bill that kept that roof over their heads, and let Dolores think it was all hers. She loved that house, bragged about it to her friends, acted like it was her kingdom. And now, sitting there with my whiskey, I realized something. She didn't deserve it. Not after what she'd done. I took another sip, the glass cold against my fingers, and started thinking about what came next. I wasn't going to storm back and demand apologies, that wasn't me. But I wasn't going to let her keep living off me either. She wanted me gone? Fine. I'd leave. But I'd take what was mine with me. I pulled up my accounts, checked the payments I'd set up for the house, internet, water, gas, the mortgage, and let my cursor hover over the cancel buttons. Not yet, I told myself. I'd give Mira a chance to see it first, to understand what her mom had pushed away. But if she didn't? If she stayed blind to it? Then Dolores would find out exactly who'd been holding up her perfect little life. I finished my drink, the warmth spreading through me, and leaned back in the chair. The bar was quiet, just a few suits talking low at a table across the room. I could hear the hum of the city outside, cars, voices, life moving on. It felt strange, being out here alone, but it wasn't bad. For the first time in months, I wasn't walking on eggshells, waiting for the next insult. I closed my laptop, paid the tab, and headed upstairs. The room was small, the bed stiff, but it was mine for now. I lay down, staring at the ceiling, and pictured Dolores back at the house, probably smirking in her pristine kitchen, thinking she'd chased me off for good. She didn't know I'd been the one keeping the lights on, the water running, the heat humming through those walls. She didn't know I could turn it all off with a click. I didn't sleep much that night, but I didn't need to. My mind was clear, sharper than it had been in weeks. I wasn't angry anymore, not like I'd been in the kitchen, with my shirt soaked and my hands shaking. This was different. This was control. I'd let Dolores have her moment, let her think she'd won. But tomorrow? Tomorrow she'd start to feel it. Not with a bang, not with a fight, but with the quiet kind of payback that hits hardest when you don't even see it coming. I rolled over, closed my eyes, and let that thought carry me off. She'd regret it, not because I'd make her, but because she'd done it to herself. And me? I was already moving on. I woke up in that hotel room feeling lighter than I had in months. My name's Callum Reyes, and after walking out of Dolores's house the day before, I'd slept better than I expected. No dreams, no tossing, just a solid, quiet rest. The whiskey from the night before still lingered in my system, a faint warmth that steadied me as I sat up and checked my phone. There were a few missed calls from Mira, a couple of texts asking where I was, but I didn't answer. Not yet. I needed space to think, to let everything settle. My shoulders still ached a little from where Dolores had hit me with that hot water, but it wasn't bad, just a dull reminder of why I'd left. I got up, showered, and ordered coffee from room service, setting up my laptop on the small desk by the window. The city was waking up outside, cars humming along the streets below, and I felt oddly calm, like I'd finally taken back something I'd lost. I was halfway through my coffee when my phone buzzed again. Myra's name flashed on the screen, and this time I picked up. "Callum," she said, her voice tight and shaky. "Where are you? Something's wrong at the house." I leaned back in my chair, keeping my tone even. "What's going on?" She took a breath, and I could hear the panic creeping in. "The internet's down, and the water isn't running. Mom can't call anyone. Her phone line's disconnected too. What's happening?" I stayed quiet for a second, letting her words hang there. I knew exactly what was happening, but I didn't say it. "Not yet." "Sounds rough," I said, simple and neutral. "Did you check with the companies?" She hesitated. "Mom's trying to, but she's freaking out. She thinks it's some kind of glitch." "Callum, do you know anything about this?" I took a sip of my coffee, the bitterness sharp on my tongue. "Mira," I said, "you'll figure it out. Call me if you need me." I hung up before she could push further, setting the phone face down on the desk. I wasn't ready to lay it all out for her. Not because I wanted to punish her, but because she needed to see it for herself. Dolores had spent months treating me like dirt, calling me a leech, a beggar, when all along I'd been the one holding her world together. That house she loved so much, the one she'd kicked me out of, it wasn't hers. It never had been, not since her husband died and left her with a pile of debt she couldn't handle. I'd stepped in back then, quiet as always, because Mira asked me to. She'd been a mess, crying about how her mom might lose the place, how it was the last piece of her dad she had left. So I did what I do best. I fixed it. I bought the house in my name, paid off the mortgage, and set up every utility, water, gas, electric, internet, to run through my accounts. I didn't tell Dolores because I didn't need her gratitude. I did it for Mira to give her peace of mind. Big mistake. By noon, Mira texted again. "The gas is off now. Mom's losing it." I didn't reply. I pulled up my banking app instead, scrolling through the payments I'd been making every month. There they were, all lined up like soldiers. $1,200 for the mortgage, $150 for water, $80 for internet, $200 for gas and electric. My money, every cent of it, keeping that house alive while Dolores sneered at me over her morning coffee. I'd never missed a payment, never let it lapse, even when she started her rants about me being unemployed. She didn't know because she never asked, and I didn't tell her because I didn't want the fight. But now, sitting in that hotel room with the sun climbing higher outside, I felt the shift. I'd stopped the payments last night, not out of spite, but because I was done carrying her. I'd given Mira my login details once, months ago, in case she ever needed to check something, but she'd never used them. Dolores sure as hell didn't have them. They'd figure it out soon enough, when the mortgage company called or the lights didn't come back on. I leaned back, staring at the screen, and let myself imagine it. Dolores pacing her precious kitchen, yelling at some poor customer service rep, Mira trying to calm her down. They'd dig through bills, call around, and eventually stumble on the truth that I'd been the one paying for everything, that the house was in my name, that without me, it was all falling apart. I didn't need to be there to see it. I could feel it coming, steady and sure, like a train rolling down the tracks. My phone buzzed again, another text from Mira. The mortgage company just called. "Mom's crying." "What's going on?" I set the phone down, didn't answer. She'd connect the dots soon enough, and when she did, she'd have to decide what it meant. I wasn't hiding anything. I just stopped holding it up for them. I finished my coffee, the cup cold in my hands, and opened my trading dashboard. The market was up, my accounts ticking along like always. $55,000 a month, quiet and steady, more than enough to keep me going wherever I landed next. I didn't need that house, didn't need Dolores's approval. I'd built my life on my own terms, and I could do it again. The afternoon stretched out, and I worked, the numbers keeping me grounded. By evening, Mira called again, her voice softer this time. Callum, did you stop paying for the house? I didn't dodge it. Yeah, I said, plain and simple. It's my house, Mira. I bought it. I paid for everything. Your mom kicked me out, so I stopped. She went quiet, and I could hear her breathing, slow and uneven. Why didn't you tell us? She asked finally. I didn't think I had to, I said. I did it for you. But I'm not doing it anymore. She didn't say anything after that, just hung up, and I let the silence settle. Dolores had wanted me gone, and now I was. But she'd built her whole life on something she didn't even own, and when it hit her, really hit her, she'd have no one to blame but herself. I closed my laptop, stretched out on the bed, and watched the city lights flicker outside. Tomorrow would be messy, I knew that. But for now, I was free, and that was enough. I was sitting in my hotel room, sipping a fresh cup of coffee, when the knock came. My name's Callum Reyes, and I'd been expecting something, maybe a call from Mira, maybe another frantic text, but not this. It was the next day after the utilities started dropping, and I'd spent the morning working, keeping my mind on my trades instead of the mess I'd left behind. The knock was sharp, insistent, and when I opened the door, there she was, Dolores, standing in the hallway with her arms crossed and her face red with barely contained rage. Mira was behind her, looking smaller than usual, her eyes darting between me and her mom like she wasn't sure what was about to happen. I stepped back, letting them in without a word, and closed the door behind them. Dolores didn't waste time. What did you do to my house? She demanded, her voice loud enough to bounce off the walls. She took a step toward me, her finger jabbing the air like a weapon. I set my coffee down on the desk, crossed my arms, and looked at her, calm as I could manage. My house, Dolores, I said, keeping my tone even. You kicked me out of my house. Her face went pale, then flushed red again, like she couldn't decide whether to scream or collapse. She opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again. What are you talking about? She snapped. That's my home, mine and Myra's. You've got no right to mess with it. I glanced at Mira, who was standing by the window now, her hands twisted together. She wouldn't meet my eyes, but I could tell she knew more than her mom did. I turned back to Dolores, steady and slow. It's in my name, I said. I bought it when your husband died. Paid off the mortgage, covered the utilities, everything. You didn't know because I didn't tell you. But it's mine, and I'm not paying for it anymore. Her jaw dropped, and for a second, she just stared at me, like the words didn't make sense. Then she laughed, a short, bitter sound that didn't match the fury in her eyes. You're lying, she hissed. You? Some unemployed nobody who sits around all day? You didn't buy my house. You couldn't. I didn't flinch. I'd heard it all before, her rants, her insults, the way she decided I was nothing because I didn't fit her idea of a man. I run an investment firm, I said, simple and clear. I make $55,000 a month. I've been keeping your lights on, your water running, your phone working. You never asked how, and I never bragged. But when you threw that water on me and told me to get out, I listened. I'm out. And so's my money. Dolores's face twisted, her hands balling into fists at her sides. She looked like she wanted to hit me, but she didn't move. Mira stepped forward then, her voice soft and shaky. Callum, is this true? She asked, finally looking at me. You've been paying for everything? I nodded. Yeah, since your dad passed. You knew I took care of the mortgage. I told you back then. But the rest? I just handled it. Didn't think it mattered who knew. Myra's eyes filled with tears, and she turned to her mom. Mom, did you know any of this? Dolores didn't answer right away. She was still glaring at me, her chest heaving like she was trying to breathe through the anger. He's lying, she said again, but it sounded weaker this time, less sure. He's trying to trick us, Mira. He's got no proof. I shrugged, walked over to my laptop, and pulled up the banking app. I turned the screen toward them, scrolling through the payments, mortgage, water, gas, electric, all with my name on them, all stopped as of yesterday. There's your proof, I said. Call the companies if you want. They'll tell you the same thing. Mira stared at the screen, her hand covering her mouth, while Dolores just stood there, her eyes locked on the numbers like they were burning her. You lied to us, she said finally, her voice low and venomous. No, I corrected, closing the laptop. You never asked. You assumed I was some deadbeat because I didn't leave for an office every day. You judged me because I didn't fit your picture of what a man should be. But I was the one keeping your roof over your head, and you thanked me by throwing hot water in my face. Dolores flinched at that, just a little, but she didn't back down. You should have said something, she snapped. Why didn't you? Because I didn't need to, I said. I did it for Mira, not for you. But I'm done now. You wanted me gone, so I'm gone. Mira started crying then, quiet sobs that made her shoulders shake. Callum, I didn't know, she said. I swear I didn't know it was all you. I looked at her, my wife, the woman I loved enough to carry this load for, and felt a pang of something, regret, maybe, or just exhaustion. You knew enough, I said gently. You just didn't want to see it. Dolores stepped between us, her face hard again. So what now? She demanded. You're just going to let us lose everything? You're that petty. I shook my head. It's not petty. It's fair. You made it clear I don't belong in your house. I'm respecting that. What happens next is up to you. She stared at me, her mouth tight, and I could see the wheels turning. Anger, fear, maybe even a flicker of shame. Mira reached for her mom's arm, but Dolores shook her off. You're a coward, she said, spitting the words like they'd hurt me. Hiding behind your money instead of facing us. I smiled, just a little, because she still didn't get it. I'm not hiding, I said. I'm right here. But I'm not begging to be let back in either. You figure out what you're going to do without me. They left after that, Mira with her head down, Dolores with one last glare over her shoulder. I closed the door, picked up my coffee, and sat back down. The room was quiet again, just the hum of the city outside, and I felt steady. Dolores thought she could bully me into submission, but all she'd done was show me how little she understood. I didn't need her approval, didn't need her house. I'd given her everything, and she'd thrown it back in my face. Now she'd see what that cost her, not because I was cruel, but because I was done being her doormat. And me? I was already moving on. I was sitting in my hotel room, sipping a fresh cup of coffee, when the knock came. My name's Callum Reyes, and I'd been expecting something. Maybe a call from Mira, maybe another frantic text, but not this. It was the next day after the utilities started dropping, and I'd spent the morning working, keeping my mind on my trades instead of the mess I'd left behind. The knock was sharp, insistent, and when I opened the door, there she was, Dolores, standing in the hallway with her arms crossed and her face red with barely contained rage. Mira was behind her, looking smaller than usual, her eyes darting between me and her mom like she wasn't sure what was about to happen. I stepped back, letting them in without a word, and closed the door behind them. Dolores didn't waste time. What did you do to my house? She demanded, her voice loud enough to bounce off the walls. She took a step toward me, her finger jabbing the air like a weapon. I set my coffee down on the desk, crossed my arms, and looked at her, calm as I could manage. My house, Dolores, I said, keeping my tone even. You kicked me out of my house. Her face went pale, then flushed red again, like she couldn't decide whether to scream or collapse. She opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again. What are you talking about? She snapped. That's my home, mine and Myra's. You've got no right to mess with it. I glanced at Mira, who was standing by the window now, her hands twisted together. She wouldn't meet my eyes, but I could tell she knew more than her mom did. I turned back to Dolores, steady and slow. It's in my name, I said. I bought it when your husband died. Paid off the mortgage, covered the utilities, everything. You didn't know because I didn't tell you. But it's mine, and I'm not paying for it anymore. Her jaw dropped, and for a second, she just stared at me, like the words didn't make sense. Then she laughed, a short, bitter sound that didn't match the fury in her eyes. You're lying, she hissed. You? Some unemployed nobody who sits around all day? You didn't buy my house. You couldn't. I didn't flinch. I'd heard it all before, her rants, her insults, the way she decided I was nothing because I didn't fit her idea of a man. I run an investment firm, I said, simple and clear. I make $55,000 a month. I've been keeping your lights on, your water running, your phone working. You never asked how, and I never bragged. But when you threw that water on me and told me to get out, I listened. I'm out. And so's my money. Dolores's face twisted, her hands balling into fists at her sides. She looked like she wanted to hit me, but she didn't move. Mira stepped forward then, her voice soft and shaky. "Callum, is this true?" she asked, finally looking at me. "You've been paying for everything?" I nodded. "Yeah, since your dad passed. You knew I took care of the mortgage. I told you back then. But the rest? I just handled it. Didn't think it mattered who knew." Myra's eyes filled with tears, and she turned to her mom. "Mom, did you know any of this?" Dolores didn't answer right away. She was still glaring at me, her chest heaving like she was trying to breathe through the anger. "He's lying," she said again, but it sounded weaker this time, less sure. "He's trying to trick us, Mira. He's got no proof." I shrugged, walked over to my laptop, and pulled up the banking app. I turned the screen toward them, scrolling through the payments, mortgage, water, gas, electric, all with my name on them, all stopped as of yesterday. "There's your proof," I said. "Call the companies if you want. They'll tell you the same thing." Mira stared at the screen, her hand covering her mouth, while Dolores just stood there, her eyes locked on the numbers like they were burning her. "You lied to us," she said finally, her voice low and venomous. "No," I corrected, closing the laptop. "You never asked. You assumed I was some deadbeat because I didn't leave for an office every day. You judged me because I didn't fit your picture of what a man should be. But I was the one keeping your roof over your head, and you thanked me by throwing hot water in my face." Dolores flinched at that, just a little, but she didn't back down. "You should have said something," she snapped. "Why didn't you?" "Because I didn't need to," I said. "I did it for Mira, not for you. But I'm done now. You wanted me gone, so I'm gone." Mira started crying then, quiet sobs that made her shoulders shake. "Callum, I didn't know," she said. "I swear I didn't know it was all you." I looked at her, my wife, the woman I loved enough to carry this load for, and felt a pang of something, regret, maybe, or just exhaustion. "You knew enough," I said gently. "You just didn't want to see it." Dolores stepped between us, her face hard again. "So what now?" she demanded. "You're just going to let us lose everything? You're that petty?" I shook my head. "It's not petty. It's fair. You made it clear I don't belong in your house. I'm respecting that. What happens next is up to you." She stared at me, her mouth tight, and I could see the wheels turning with anger, fear, maybe even a flicker of shame. Mira reached for her mom's arm, but Dolores shook her off. "You're a coward," she said, spitting the words like they'd hurt me. "Hiding behind your money instead of facing us." I smiled, just a little, because she still didn't get it. "I'm not hiding," I said. "I'm right here. But I'm not begging to be let back in either. You figure out what you're going to do without me." They left after that, Mira with her head down, Dolores with one last glare over her shoulder. I closed the door, picked up my coffee, and sat back down. The room was quiet again, just the hum of the city outside, and I felt steady. Dolores thought she could bully me into submission, but all she'd done was show me how little she understood. I didn't need her approval, didn't need her house. I'd given her everything, and she'd thrown it back in my face. Now she'd see what that cost her, not because I was cruel, but because I was done being her doormat. And me? I was already moving on. I stood there in the hotel room after Dolores and Mira left, the silence settling around me like a blanket. My name's Callum Reyes, and that confrontation had been coming for a long time, months of tension boiling down to one raw, messy moment. I picked up my coffee, now lukewarm, and took a sip, letting the bitterness ground me. Dolores's words were still ringing in my ears, calling me a coward, accusing me of hiding behind my money, but they didn't sting like she'd hoped. I'd laid it all out for her, plain and simple. The house was mine, the bills had been mine, and now they weren't. She could twist it however she wanted, but the truth wasn't going anywhere. I sat down at the desk, staring out at the city through the window, and thought about Mira. She'd been quiet through most of it, her tears falling like she didn't know how to stop them. I hated seeing her like that, my wife, the woman I'd built my life around, but I couldn't keep carrying this for her anymore. She'd known enough, even if she didn't want to admit it. I'd told her about the house when I bought it, told her I'd handle the mortgage so her mom wouldn't lose it. She'd nodded, thanked me, and then let it fade into the background while Dolores tore me down day after day. I didn't blame her, not fully, but I couldn't keep pretending it didn't matter. I set the coffee down and leaned back, my mind replaying the last few minutes. Dolores had stormed in, all fire and fury, demanding answers she didn't want to hear. When I showed her the proof, the payments, the deed in my name, she called me a liar, a coward, anything to keep from facing what she'd done. But Mira? She just stood there, crumbling under the weight of it all. I'd given her a choice before they left, though I didn't say it loud. It was there in my eyes, in the way I looked at her. You can stay with your mom, Or you can come build a future with someone who doesn't need to be loud to be strong. She didn't answer then, didn't say much at all, but I could feel her pulling away, caught between me and the woman who'd raised her. I knew what was coming before she did. They left the hotel, and I didn't hear from her again that day. Not a call, not a text. I worked instead, diving into my trading dashboard, letting the numbers pull me back to something solid. I made $55,000 a month running my investment firm, and it was steady, reliable, a life I'd built from scratch. I didn't need Dolores's house or her approval to keep going. But as the hours ticked by, I kept picturing Myra's face, those tears, that quiet heartbreak, and I wondered what she'd do. By evening, my phone buzzed with a message from her. "Callum, I'm staying with Mom for now. I need time to think." I read it twice, let it sink in, and then set the phone down. I'd known it was coming. She wasn't ready to leave her mom. Not yet. Dolores was her anchor, even if that anchor was dragging her down. I didn't reply. There wasn't much to say. She'd made her choice, and I wasn't going to beg her to change it. I'd spent too long bending for them, swallowing Dolores's insults, keeping the peace for Myra's sake. I was done. I got up, poured myself a glass of water from the sink, ironic, considering the house didn't have any right now, and stood by the window, watching the city lights flicker on. Mira staying with Dolores didn't surprise me, but it still hurt, a quiet ache I couldn't shake. I loved her, still do, even now, but love wasn't enough to fix this. She'd picked familiarity over me, and I had to let her go. That night, I called my lawyer, a guy I'd worked with on some business deals. "Hey, Mike," I said when he picked up. "I need divorce papers drawn up. Nothing messy, just a clean split." He didn't ask many questions, just took the details, promised to have it ready by morning. I hung up, feeling a strange mix of relief and heaviness. Filing for divorce wasn't about punishing Mira, it was about setting myself free. We'd been married less than a year, and I'd spent most of it trying to hold together something that was breaking from the start. I didn't want her money, didn't want to fight, just wanted out. The next morning, Mike emailed me the papers. I signed them, sent them back, and had them delivered to Mira at Dolores's house. Or my house, technically, though I wasn't going back. It was quick, clean, final, just like I'd asked. I didn't call her to warn her, didn't soften it with a note. She'd see it when it arrived, and she'd know where I stood. I spent the rest of the day working, meeting a client over video, keeping my mind busy. The hotel room felt less temporary now, more like a stepping stone to whatever came next. I didn't hate Mira for choosing her mom. I got it, even if it stung. Dolores had her hooks in deep, years of guilt and loyalty tying Mira to her side. But I wasn't going to wait around for her to untangle it. I'd given her a chance, laid it all out, and she'd stayed where she was. That was her call, and this was mine. By nightfall, I got a text from a mutual friend. "Mira got the papers. She's a wreck." I didn't reply to that either. I didn't doubt she was hurting. She'd loved me too, in her way, but I couldn't fix it for her anymore. I'd spent months being the strong one, the quiet one, the guy who took it all and kept going. Now I was done. I turned off my phone, poured another glass of water, and sat back down at my desk. The city hummed outside, alive and moving, and I felt like I was finally part of it again, not stuck in Dolores's shadow, not tethered to a life that didn't want me. Mira had made her choice, and I'd made mine. The divorce was just paperwork now, a line drawn in the sand. I didn't know what came next, but for the first time in a long time, I was ready to find out, on my terms, no one else's. I woke up the next morning in that hotel room with a strange kind of peace settling over me. My name's Callum Reyes, and after filing the divorce papers the day before, I'd expected to feel heavier, maybe angry, maybe sad, but instead, I just felt done. Done with the fighting, done with the weight of Dolores's house, done with trying to prove myself to people who didn't care. I got out of bed, made coffee with the little machine in the room, and sat by the window, watching the city stretch out below me. The sun was just coming up, painting the skyline in soft gold, and for the first time in months, I didn't dread what the day might bring. I'd made my move, walked away, stopped the payments, signed the papers, and now it was up to Mira and Dolores to figure out their next step. I wasn't holding my breath for them to come around. I sipped my coffee, letting the warmth wake me up, and checked my phone. No calls from Mira, no texts, just a quiet screen that felt like a small victory. She'd gotten the divorce papers by now. I'd had them delivered yesterday, and I figured she was either too mad or too broken to reach out. Either way, I wasn't chasing her. I'd spent too long chasing peace in that house, and I was done running after things that didn't want to be caught. About an hour later, my phone buzzed. Not Mira, but Dolores. I stared at her name for a second, surprised she'd even try, then picked up. "Callum," she said, her voice sharp but unsteady. "We need to talk." I leaned back in my chair, keeping my tone flat. "Go ahead." She took a breath, and I could hear the strain in it, like she was fighting to keep control. "The house is a mess," she said. "No water, no heat, nothing. Myra's beside herself, and now you've sent these papers. What are you trying to do to us?" I didn't answer right away, just let her stew in it. "I'm not doing anything to you," I said finally. "You told me to get out." "I did. The house is mine, and I'm not paying for it anymore. The papers are just me moving on." She made a sound. A scoff, maybe, or a choke, and I could picture her pacing that kitchen, her kingdom falling apart around her. "You can't just leave us like this," she said. "We can't afford it without you." I almost laughed, but I held it back. "You should have thought about that before you threw hot water on me," I said, calm and steady. "You made it clear I wasn't welcome. I'm honoring that." There was a long pause, and then her voice dropped, softer, almost pleading. "You didn't deserve that," she said. "I was wrong. But can you help, just for a few weeks? Until we figure something out?" I set my coffee down, leaned forward, and smiled. Not for her, but for me. "Ma'am," I said, polite as could be. "You made it clear beggars don't belong in your house. I'm just honoring your wishes." She didn't say anything after that, just hung up, and I blocked her number right then and there. It felt good, clean, final, like cutting a rope that had been dragging me down. I didn't know her anything, not after everything she'd done. She'd spent months calling me a leech, a nobody, when I'd been the one keeping her afloat. Now she was drowning, and she thought a half-baked apology would pull her back up. Not this time. I got up, stretched, and checked my email. Work was steady, clients reaching out, trades lining up, and I dove into it, letting the numbers pull me away from the mess. Dolores called again later that day, from a different number, but I didn't pick up. She left a voicemail, her voice cracking as she rambled about how she didn't know, how she needed help, how Mira was falling apart. I deleted it without a second thought. Then came the emails, 3 of them, long and messy, full of excuses and pleas. I read the first line of each, saw the same old song, and trashed them too. She even showed up at the hotel once, a few days later, banging on my door and crying loud enough for the whole floor to hear. I didn't open it, just called the front desk, let them handle it. They escorted her out, and I watched from the window as she stormed off, her shoulders hunched like the world had turned against her. It had, in a way, but she'd built that storm herself. I didn't feel bad, not really. She'd had her chance to see me, to ask questions, to treat me like a person instead of a punching bag. She'd chosen to judge me, to attack me, to push me out. Now she was living with it. Mira didn't reach out again either, not after that first text about staying with her mom. I heard through a friend that she was angry, then sad, then just quiet, processing the divorce, the house, the whole unraveling mess. I didn't check on her. She knew where I was if she wanted to talk, but I wasn't holding my breath. She'd picked Dolores over me, and I had to let that be her call. The weeks rolled by, and I stayed in the hotel, working, thinking, letting the dust settle. Dolores kept trying, more calls from random numbers, more emails I didn't read, but I shut her out every time. I wasn't cruel about it, just firm. She'd made her bed, and I wasn't climbing back in to fix it for her. I started looking at condos downtown, something with a view, something mine. I didn't need much, just a place to land, to build from. My firm was doing well, my clients happy, and I had enough saved to start over without blinking. Dolores's voice faded a little more each day, her desperation just noise I didn't have to hear. I sat by the window one night, a glass of whiskey in my hand, and thought about how far I'd come. I'd walked away from that house, from that life, and I hadn't looked back. Dolores thought she could break me, but all she'd done was set me free. I didn't need her tears or her apologies. I had my work, my peace, and a future I could shape on my own. That was enough, more than enough. I'd been out of Dolores's house for a few months now, and life was starting to feel like mine again. My name's Callum Reyes, and after everything, the hot water, the divorce, the showdown in the hotel, I'd found a rhythm that didn't include looking over my shoulder or waiting for the next fight. I'd moved out of the hotel and into a sleek condo overlooking the bay, all glass and clean lines, with a view that stretched out to the horizon. It wasn't cheap, but I didn't blink at the price. $55,000 a month from my investment firm gave me room to breathe, to build something new. I'd furnished the place simple, a big desk for work, a couch that didn't creak, a bed that didn't carry memories of Myra's soft breathing beside me. It was quiet, and I liked it that way. I spent my days running my business, meeting clients online, and watching the market tick along like a well-oiled machine. I'd always been good at what I did. Numbers made sense to me. Risks paid off when I played them right. And now I had the space to focus on it without Dolores' shadow hanging over me. But I wasn't just sitting behind a screen anymore. A few weeks after the divorce went through, I started something I'd been thinking about for a while. Webinars for new investors, teaching them how to start small and grow steady. It wasn't about the money. Those were free. I just wanted to give something back. I'd been lucky, building what I had, and I figured I could help a few others find their footing. The sessions took off faster than I expected. Dozens of people signing up, asking questions, thanking me after. It felt good, like I was doing more than just stacking cash. One night, after a webinar, I stuck around to chat with some of the regulars in the virtual room. That's when I met Delilah. She'd been quiet during the session, just listening, but she piped up at the end with a question about tech stocks, sharp, to the point, like she'd been chewing on it for a while. I answered, and we got to talking. She was a software developer, mid-30s like me, with a dry sense of humor and a way of cutting through the noise. "You're not as boring as most finance guys," she said, grinning through the screen, and I laughed, first real laugh I'd had in a while. We kept talking after that, not every day, but enough. She'd message me about some code she was wrestling with. I'd toss her a market tip, and it grew from there. A couple weeks later, I was hosting an in-person event, mentoring kids from low-income neighborhoods, showing them how money works, how they could make it work for them. I'd rented a community center downtown, set up some laptops, and brought in coffee and snacks. Delilah showed up, unannounced, with a stack of old coding books she thought the kids might like. "Figured they could use these more than I do," she said, handing them over with a shrug. I looked at her, tall, dark hair pulled back, eyes that didn't miss much, and felt something shift. Not love, not yet, just a spark of something real. We didn't rush anything. After the event, we grabbed a drink at a bar nearby, just beer and pretzels, talking about the kids, our jobs, the little things that fill up a life. She had a sharp tongue, called me out when I got too serious, but there was a warmth to her too, a steadiness I hadn't felt in a long time. "You're not bad at this mentoring thing," she said, sipping her beer. "Better than you were at picking stocks, maybe." I grinned. "Give me time, I'll win you over on that too." She laughed, and it was easy, light, like we'd known each other longer than we had. We started seeing each other more after that, coffee here, a walk by the bay there. It wasn't a whirlwind like it had been with Mira, all passion and promises. It was slower, quieter, built on conversations and small moments. Delilah didn't need me to prove anything. She saw me, the guy behind the numbers, and that was enough. She'd tease me about my finance bro habits, like drinking black coffee at all hours, but she'd sit with me while I worked, tapping away at her own laptop, comfortable in the silence. One evening, we were at my place, the sun dipping low over the water, and she looked up from her screen. "You ever think about what you left behind?" she asked, not prying, just curious. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. "Sometimes," I said. "Not the house, don't care about that. Mira, maybe. But it's done. I'm here now." She nodded, didn't push, and went back to her work. That was Delilah. No drama, no demands, just a solid presence I could lean into. I liked that about her, liked her, period, and it was the first time since everything fell apart that I felt like I could trust someone again. Meanwhile, I heard bits and pieces about Dolores and Mira through mutual friends. The house was still dark, still quiet, and they were scrambling. Dolores had tried to get a loan, but with no job and no collateral, since the house wasn't hers, she'd come up empty. Mira was working extra hours, picking up side gigs, but it wasn't enough. I didn't check on them myself, didn't need to. They'd made their choices, and I'd made mine. I kept mentoring, kept building, kept living. Delilah started joining me at the community center sometimes, teaching the kids basic coding while I handled the money side. We'd trade looks across the room, her rolling her eyes when I got too nerdy about interest rates. me smirking when she swore at a buggy line of code. It was good, better than good. I didn't know where it was going, but I didn't need to. For the first time in a long time, I was healing, not just from Mira or Dolores, but from the weight I'd carried trying to be enough for them. Delilah saw me, not what I could give, and that was more than I'd had in years. I stood on my balcony one night, the bay stretching out dark and calm, and realized I wasn't looking back anymore. I'd built something new, work, people, a life, and it was mine, all mine. I was standing on my balcony one evening, a year after I'd walked out of Dolores's house, when I got the news. My name's Callum Reyes, and by then, I'd settled into a life that felt like it fit. My condo by the bay, my work humming along, Delilah a steady part of my days. The sun was sinking low, turning the water into a sheet of gold, and I was sipping a beer, letting the quiet wash over me. My phone buzzed on the railing, a text from an old friend, Jake, who still kept tabs on Mira and Dolores through the grapevine. House is up for sale, it read. Dolores couldn't keep it. Myra's in an apartment now. Thought you'd want to know. I set the beer down, leaned on the railing, and stared out at the horizon, letting that sink in. A year ago, I'd been the one holding that house together, paying the mortgage, the utilities, everything, while Dolores called me a leech and Mira stood by, too torn to see it. Now it was gone, or soon would be, and I didn't feel much of anything. Not triumph, not sadness, just a kind of finality, like turning the last page of a book I'd stopped reading long ago. I didn't reply to Jake right away, just stood there, the breeze cool against my skin, and thought about how it had all played out. After I'd stopped the payments and filed for divorce, Dolores had tried to claw her way back. She'd called, emailed, even showed up at my hotel, begging for help with tears in her eyes. I'd shut her out every time, not out of spite, but because I was done being her lifeline. She'd spent months treating me like dirt, throwing hot water on me, kicking me out of my own house, and I wasn't going to let her guilt me into saving her again. Mira had stayed with her, choosing her mom over me, and I'd let her go too. The divorce went through quick, clean, no fights over money or assets, and I'd moved on. Now, a year later, the house was on the market, and I could picture it. The for sale sign out front, the pristine kitchen Dolores loved so much sitting empty, the backyard overgrown because no one was there to tend it. Jake had filled in the gaps over the months. Dolores couldn't get a loan, couldn't pay the property taxes, couldn't keep up without my money. Mira had tried to help, picking up extra work, but it wasn't enough. She'd moved out eventually, renting a small place on the edge of town, barely talking to her mom anymore. I didn't reach out, didn't check on them myself. They'd made their choices, and I'd made mine. I picked up my beer again, took a long sip, and let my mind drift to where I was now. The condo was home, simple, modern, with a view that reminded me every day I'd landed on my feet. My firm was doing better than ever, pulling in steady cash, and the webinars I'd started were growing, people signing up from all over to learn what I'd figured out over the years. The mentoring gig with the kids was the best part, watching them light up when they got how money could work for them, not just against them. Delilah was there too, a constant now, teaching them coding while I handled the finance side. We'd fallen into something good, her and me, nothing loud or flashy, just real. She'd moved in a couple months back, her laptop and coffee mugs mixing with mine, and it felt right, like we'd built it together without even trying. I chuckled to myself, thinking about what Jake had said once. Dolores still calls you the biggest mistake she ever misjudged. It was funny, in a way, not because I cared what she thought, but because she'd been so wrong, so blind, and it had cost her everything. She'd thought I was nothing, a bum living off her daughter, when I'd been the one keeping her world from falling apart. I didn't need to prove it to her then, and I sure as hell didn't now. All I'd done was walk away, and when she woke up the next morning, her whole life had walked away with me. I didn't sue her, didn't yell, didn't even tell her off. I just left, and that was enough. The house going up for sale was the last echo of it, the final note in a song I'd stopped singing. I heard the sliding door behind me open, and Delilah stepped out, her hair loose and a glass of wine in her hand. "You're brooding again," she said, leaning against the railing beside me. "What's it this time?" I smiled, handed her my phone with Jake's text still up. She read it, raised an eyebrow, and handed it back. "Huh," she said. "Guess that's that." "Yeah," I said, taking another sip of my beer. "Guess so." She didn't push, didn't ask how I felt, just stood there with me, watching the water. That was Delilah. No fuss, no drama, just there. We stayed like that for a while, the sky darkening, the city lights blinking on across the bay. I thought about Mira for a second, wondered how she was holding up in that apartment, if she ever thought about me, but it passed quick. She'd chosen her path, and I'd chosen mine. I didn't hate her, didn't even hate Dolores. They'd lost more than I had, and that was their burden to carry. You ever miss it? Delilah asked after a bit, her voice soft. The house? The life? I shook my head. Not really. It wasn't mine, not the way this is. She nodded, sipped her wine, and leaned her shoulder against mine. Good, she said. This suits you better. I laughed, quiet and easy, and felt the last thread of that old life slip away. The house was gone. Dolores was a ghost, Mira a memory. I had my work, my kids at the center, Delilah beside me, and a view that stretched out forever. I'd walked away with nothing but a bag and my laptop, and now I had everything I needed. Dolores woke up one day to a world without me, and I woke up to one that was mine. That was the quiet payback, not revenge, just truth, and it was more than enough.